Hey friends, welcome to the Angie Ambrosetti Show, Let Her Out to Play. I'm Angie, your host, a teenage mom turned multi-six-figure earner, married to the same man for nearly 40 years. I'm a homeschooling mom of 7 and totally unqualified, at least on paper, but wildly called by God. Remember, He doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Here, we are going to talk about it all. Healing from the hard stuff, building a business with heart, raising a big family, walking in faith, and finally breaking free from the lies that said we weren't enough. So if you're ready to stop playing small, shake off the doubt and the shame, and step fully into who you were created to be, girl, you are in the right place. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to the Angie Ambrosetti Show, Let Her Out to Play. I am so pumped up about my interview today with my sweet friend, Michelle King. And I'm just going to be super honest. We've never met in person, but thank goodness for technology because,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, I met Michelle via Zoom through another friend, and she actually is my son's acting coach. And so we have just enjoyed getting to know one another through Zoom. And the beautiful thing is, the Lord led her to be my son's coach, but yet now here we are doing an interview on this podcast for teenage moms. And I'm just going to give you a little insight about Michelle. She was 18 years old when she found out she was going to have her first baby. She now has 10 children. I thought I hit the nail on the head with my 7, but she's outdone me here. And she has been married to her amazing husband for 30 years. So, Michelle, welcome to the Angie Ambrosetti Show.
Thank you very much. It is awesome to be here. And I think what you're doing is fantastic and is going to be a huge blessing to a lot of people.
Thank you. I am praying for that
You're
end.
welcome.
That's why I'm doing this in the first place. But
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so let's go back. Let's go
Okay.
back to when you were 18 years old. Take us back to that time, that place when you first found out you were pregnant. Tell us all the things.
All the things. Yeah. So I went to Planned Parenthood, found out I was pregnant, and I look back on that now and thinking to myself, I went right and called my mom back when they still had payphones and you had to call long distance and do all the things back in 1988. And I called my mom, and I wasn't afraid to call my mom. A lot of people are so afraid to tell anybody. And it's like, I went right to her and I told her, and she's like, we will figure this out. And I had graduated high school. So, and I had dealt with a lot of stuff growing up. I had dealt with, sexual abuse, and I had been kind of promiscuous and never gotten pregnant. I don't know how, have no idea how. But I also knew I wasn't heading in a great direction. And I am a firm believer that God will use all things together for good. And I know that that pregnancy saved my life. I 1000% believe that. I have no doubt of it. But at the time, obviously, didn't know that. Um, scared, but at the same time determined. It never, in my mind, it never crossed my mind to have an abortion. My dad pushed very hard for me to do that. And I said, absolutely not. And he's like, fine, you're on your own. So I left and moved in with the baby daddy for a short time. And that really was not working well. We were still together, but where he lived and what was going on in his world, it was a very, very bad, literally bad environment, roach infested, and just it was bad. So my mom and stepdad came down and said, you're coming with us. So I moved about an hour and a half away and lived with them. I worked 2 jobs. We ended up getting married when I was 6 months pregnant, and then divorced about literally 1 year later. So I was very determined. Um, like I said, it wasn't an option for me to have an abortion. Um, I considered adoption, but then it was like, I'll just be real. I felt too selfish to do that. I didn't want somebody else raising my child. And there's nothing wrong with adoption. You and I both are touched by adoption. And we have 2 children that are adopted. But at the time, that's where I was at 18. And it was like, okay, I'm going to do what I need to do to get this done. And I worked 2 jobs. Baby daddy worked and done jobs and took our money sometimes and stuff. And it wasn't a great situation, but I just put my nose to the grindstone and grew up really fast.
Yeah. So did you say you were graduated from high school?
I did. I graduated in May, found out I was pregnant in August
Okay.
or
This is
September.
just connecting with me that I found out I was pregnant in 88 as well. Like
Oh
I didn't
man.
realize that
Oh
part of
wow.
your story. Yeah.
Wow.
And I had graduated in 87. So
Okay.
I had been out of school a little bit. So you did get with your baby daddy. You guys got married and you basically were pulling the weight.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, not in the little sense, the literal sense, because you were
Literal
pregnant.
and figuratively, all the ways I was
Yeah.
pulling the weight. Yeah,
But you,
he was not able to grow up in
mhm.
that sense. So we
And
got divorced and he didn't really see her very much at all.
sounds like you had the support of your mom and your stepdad.
Yes.
So
Yes. My mom,
that's
my
great.
stepdad, and my stepmom who had left my dad
Okay.
at the time. So I had all of them and I had a couple of friends who had been through the process. One of my best friends had a baby at 16.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh my goodness, Jackie, what do I do? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was actually going to be my next question is were you surrounded or did you have other people in your life who had been teenage moms? And so, yeah, to have a friend who was 16, she probably had a little bit of insight to encourage you.
she did. Yeah, she definitely had insight to encourage me. And there were people who were very judgmental and, oh, you're just a tramp and all, they say
Hmm.
things. Thank God that we didn't have social media back in the day when I was going through that. I'll just say that. Um, because it's way worse now whenever you are in any sort of spotlight for anything. But,
Yeah.
gossip is gossip and people say what they're going to say. And I just decided I needed to do what I needed to do for her. Now,
Right.
was I a screwed up, 18-year-old who was not making great choices and, you know, doing things wrong and doing all that? Yeah. And unfortunately, the oldest typically has to go through that with you. And you
Hmm.
kind of you grow up together sometimes in those situations, and that can be really hard.
Yes.
But I tried my hardest and I tried to do the right things. And if I messed up, I would quickly try to fix it and get back on track.
Wow.
Always kept a job, always kept a roof over my head, and um, worked at trying to be a good parent. I then, after we split up, the baby daddy and I split up, I was doing pretty good. And then I ended up meeting my second husband, who is not my husband now. I've been married 3 times. And he was a lot older than me. So in my naivete, I was like, okay, I'm going to get somebody way older than me. And he was like 18 years older than me.
Mm.
And so then he's going to be stable. He's going to do all these kinds of things. And then I had my second daughter with him, and that did not work out at that time. And then I was 21 when I had her.
Hmm.
So from that time I was 18 to there. By the time I was 21, I was divorced twice,
Okay.
raising 2 girls.
Single mom,
Yes, ma'am.
2 daughters,
Hmm.
and doing it on your own. What do you feel like was the most challenging thing? Really, like not even stepping into motherhood, but stepping into single mom with 2 kids and being so young. Because 21 is still really young. I mean, I'm 56 and that's still really young in my book. So
Right.
at
Back in the day,
21,
we didn't think that, but now we
right.
go, oh my gosh, that's really young.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think for me specifically, the biggest thing for me is that I really just wanted to have love. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be a wife and a mom and settle down and have that.
Hmm.
But I was going about all of that the wrong way because I had an extremely verbally abusive dad and had the whole narcissistic thing you go into, and didn't know that at the time. And now as a much older adult, I recognize that's what it was. And then
Hmm.
I had been abused, not by him, but I had been sexually abused and had all that. So I was just really, really screwed up. Had a lot of divorces between my mom, my dad, and me. We have 11 marriages. My dad was married twice, my mom 3 times, and me 3 times. So there was a lot of generational crap that was going
Hmm.
on, and that and the other. But in my heart of hearts, I really just I wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
So that's where, what's the country song? Looking for love in all the wrong places, just
Hmm.
doing that kind of thing. It's like I felt divided a lot of
Hmm.
I wanted to be a good mom, I wanted to be a good provider, but it was so taxing and so exhausting. And I wanted somebody to do life with.
Yeah.
So I struggled with a lot of that going into it. I could work all day long. That
Yeah.
wasn't my issue.
Which, like, is totally understandable because not just women, but women mostly, like, we really do crave love.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it doesn't always come in the right package that we're looking for when we get started. And
Correct.
so I just want to say that I'm like, I didn't even know this about you beforehand, about your family, but I'm so proud of you to just claim it and just say, hey, I'm breaking these generational curses of
Yes,
the
ma'am.
divorce and all the things. And because I have talked to a lot of women in during this process of some of them aren't even doing the podcast with me, but a lot of them are. And when I talk to them about the different divorces, um, there have been a lot in all of the women that I've chatted with about this. And I think it all goes back to the point that women in general, they want to feel loved and comforted. And especially if they're not getting that from their father figure, that's what they're
Mhm.
looking for.
Yes. And they will gravitate towards, we end up having this in some version or another, kind of this savior complex. So we gravitate towards the needy ones
Hmm.
who we can save and they will love us to the end of time. It's not the Cinderella story per se, but in a really weird way, that's what we're doing. We're going to save them and then they're going to be just love us so much and we're going to live happily ever after. And that
Yeah.
never, ever, 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 ever works.
Yeah.
If that's something I can say to somebody that will hear it, that would be a big one. That does not work,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Hmm. Well, so one other question that I had, is that in the beginning when we started talking and you said that it's just interesting that you mentioned Planned Parenthood
Yeah,
because that's more like you like abortion is an option when you're at Planned
correct.
Parenthood.
And some push it.
And some do. And so I was just wondering, did you have like was faith a part of your beginning journey like it is now, or is that why you like I'm not a proponent of abortion, but I'm just wondering, were you was did faith play? I'm trying to get my word out here. Did faith play a part in that as to why you were like, no, absolutely, abortion is not an option, or did you just feel it in your core that like that's not an option for me?
Kind of a combo. So my
Okay.
mom got saved when I was 3. My dad was anti, like, atheist,
Mhm.
on that end. So that obviously didn't help their situation. And she tried to overcompensate for his bad stuff. And so she was very, going to church and shoving it down my throat. And I don't fault her for it. I'm just saying that's where she was when I was young.
Okay.
So I did go to church when I was young. But then as I got older, me doing my own thing was what I wanted. And it was like, I believed in God, but and heck no, did I want to follow him? I wanted to do my own thing. So I didn't have any kind of relationship with God. I
Okay.
knew he was there and felt more like he was ready to hit me over the head with the 2x4 growing up.
Hmm.
But then it was, well, might as well. I've already screwed up. So I'm going to do what I want anyway,
Yeah.
because I don't want to give up this. I need to do this. And I had a period of many, many years that I never cried or showed much emotion or anything of that in that respect of things. Um, so when I was 18 and finding out I was pregnant, that was not an active part of my thought process. The active thought process is this was a human being. It didn't matter what the Bible said. So it was that. But at the same time, I did believe in God and I knew God didn't want babies to die.
Hmm.
So it was kind of a combo, but more of the core of
Yeah.
that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because as we're doing this interview, I'm thinking we are so much alike.
Really? That's awesome.
I I was well, I think you said you were a little bit of a rebel. Did I hear you say that?
Oh, yeah,
Or a
that's
lot
an
bit of a
understatement.
rebel? Okay.
Lot bit of a rebel.
Yeah. Okay. So me too. So high five to the rebels in the
High
world.
five. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, very much so. Even though I
Hmm.
wanted to do the right thing, it's kind of how I made myself stand out because I felt so incompetent in so many
Hmm.
areas. So being a rebel, it kind of, balanced things out a little bit to make me feel a little bit more worthy, so to speak, even though it really
Yes.
wasn't there.
Made me feel stronger, or I had
Mhm.
control. A
Yeah.
lot of being rebellious is needing to have that control. And if you've got chaos around you, you've got to
Hmm.
have control. And it's kind of like a, sorry, screw you, I'm going to do what I want to do kind of thing, because we need that control.
Hmm.
And we don't recognize it till we get older, that that's such a, it's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
But but at the time, that's, some of that is where that comes from. You're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to tell me where to go,
Yeah.
because I can't handle it.
Hmm. Right. I can totally relate to that. So we'll just
Yeah.
do our little air fist bumps on that one.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So now you are a mom of 10. I mean,
Yes.
that's a huge blessing and accomplishment in all rights, no matter what. And so, how do you feel like this motherhood has changed you from that 18-year-old getting started
Hmm.
into this mom of 10, married for all these years now, breaking that generational curse, like we talked about earlier?
Hmm.
Give us a little insight about that. How you met your husband? How did you like the Brady Bunch has nothing on you, my friend. Tell us about this.
Yeah, I love that show. But what, living life now I've lived, and having, I didn't really have a blended family, but having mine, and then we had ours, and then we, God brought us a couple of boys. It's kind of a mine, ours, and his,
Yeah.
to us. It
Yeah.
it definitely is like, "Ha, that was such a joke. That would not have happened in real life." But
Mhm.
I digress. Um, so going back, divorced twice by the time I was 21. The divorce didn't become final for a year or two. So I met Brian when I was 25. So I had between age 21 to 25, work, doing as a single mom and doing the thing. And after I left my second husband, I kind of came to the end of myself.
Mhm.
And I finally said, okay, God, I'm going to try to follow you. And I cried nonstop for a year, literally. Anytime I went to church, I'm sobbing my head off. I'm all the things, to the point that the first time I didn't cry at church, they were like, "Is there something wrong with you? Because you're not crying." Like
Mhm.
it was an obvious thing, and it was a year of unloading and beginning to heal, and saying, I've tried to do this on my own, and I know I can't, and I need you, God, in my life.
Mhm.
And still struggled with not feeling worthy. I chuckled at one of your questions was talking about feeling worthy, and maybe we'll get into that. But that definitely can be a generational type thing, because up to just a few years ago, still struggled hugely with the not feeling worthy part in
Mhm.
different ways, because it can be a generational type thing. It can be a tape that goes in your mind that just doesn't ever get out of there, and all that stuff. So I was doing pretty good. And I actually went to this thing called Acquire the Fire. Not too many people know about Acquire the Fire. I think his name was Ron Luce. Why I could drudge that up out of my Rolodex, I don't know.
Mhm.
But he said, I feel like God is wanting some of you young ones to take a year and step aside and just have a relationship with God. And I
Mhm.
was going as a youth leader at that time. And I was like, because at that time, I'm still wanting this love. I'm still wanting this. I'm trying to do these, I'm working hard and raising my girls. And I was able to do it without government assistance. Not that having government assistance is bad, because it is not, but
Mhm.
I felt it was an extra, oh, for me, it was an extra help to say, I could do this more on my own.
Mm-hmm.
Again, nothing wrong with needing help financially in any of those ways. I had used it a little bit when I was younger, but I was doing okay, having all these things. Um, and actually had purchased my first home. It was a trailer, but it was a very nice trailer and it was mine, and I purchased it. So working at Purdue and, I was doing good. Um, so he said that, and I kind of laughed out loud, and I felt this tap on my shoulder that God wanted me to do it. And I was not listening. And I'm just talking to one of the youth leaders, and it just was there. And so this guy, Ron Luce, is like, okay, I'm just going to wait a little bit longer, like interminably long time is what it felt like. And he was waiting and he was waiting. He goes, I'm not going to be done yet. There's other people that are still waiting and waiting. It felt like an hour, probably not more than 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes. I don't know. And I said, I feel like I'm supposed to stand up. And as soon as I stood up, he said, let's pray. And I was like, so I was like mad because I knew that God was literally waiting on me to stand up to do this. So then it was February of 1994 to February of 1995. It was monumental. I do remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is that during that time, 3 very nice guys, like, were fawning all over me. And I don't mean that in any kind of way, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not all that in a bag of chips, but they were just like, it was like Satan was trying to use them to get me off, like, I want to marry you. I want to give you a car. And I just, I want to adopt your girls. I mean, all these things that were just
Mm-hmm.
nutty. So I did make it through the year, and I had liked a guy at church, and he was dating somebody else, and they were going to get married. And sometimes I only went to church because he was there. We went out a couple of times, but he wasn't somebody that was for me. And we went back to that acquire the fire, and God said, let him go. And this was our friend Aaron. So we're real good friends, Aaron and Chris. Now they've been married as long as we have, and they're wonderful people. But it was like God was using anything. He was using anything and everything to get me, to sit down and follow him. And that was February. And this is going to sound super weird. And at the time, I never told anybody. In March, I went to a music conference with a couple of ladies. I did worship and stuff, and we sang and went to this. And I was there in South Bend. And we were laying there one night, and I said, girls, this sounds really weird, but I feel like I'm going to be moving up to this area. And they're like, what's wrong with you? And I don't know. I'm just telling you, that's just this weird feeling that I have. And then I came back home, and I had a really good cry for probably 2 days. And I laid that desire of being married and having a life, somebody to raise with my kids, and maybe having a couple of our own, and Stewart's couple of my own with them. And, having a good life that way. And I laid that on the altar, and I said, I'm a baby Christian too. So I'm just winging it. I don't have any of these great prayers or nothing. And I said, if you don't want me to be married, I will be okay. And I was doing pretty good with that for a couple months, but every once in a while I would be like, I wonder if God does have somebody for me. And like, I would think that thought, and it was the next thought was, his name is Brian. And it happened to me over the course of a couple of months, probably a dozen or more times. I never told a soul, not a soul. And because that, my ideal guy was someone who was like, looked like Prince,
Oh, I know
in
Prince.
Yeah. But skinny, scrawny, little guy, kind of more of the, not that he was a druggie, but, ones that was a rebel and, had all that. I did not like these big burly guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so his name is Brian. Then one day my mom calls me, and she says, we got a really nice guy who moved into our apartment. And I was like, oh, okay, that's good. I'm just kind of doing dishes and talking to her and whatnot. And he does this and he does that. And I'm like, oh, he probably walks on water or something. She just
Let
was,
me guess what his name was.
yeah, fawning over him. And I was like, in my head, I go, his name's probably Brian too. Like it had happened that much.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend this. This is not like I'm telling people to go out and do some sort of genie in the bottle or pray this prayer, let his name be Ralph or whatever.
Hmm.
It was what I needed for me.
Yeah.
It needed to be that weird for
Hmm.
me. And I go, yeah, what's his name? And she goes, Brian King. And I like did an audible kind of a gasp. And she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, nothing. And she's like, what? So we bantered, argued for a couple minutes. So I told her what I just told you. And she goes,
Hmm.
you need to meet.
Interesting.
And we, there's that'd be a whole nother podcast or two. We ended up meeting in May, the day after his birthday. And we got married in October 7th of the same year. And it will be 30 years this October that we've been married
Well,
because I let God
yeah.
choose him. And he's 6'3", 200 at the time, 220 pounds. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is not my type, and he was gentle and he didn't raise his voice. And one time we're dating and I'm like, you're just being a jerk. And he's like, there's no reason to call names. I'm like, oh my Lanta. If you had seen the knockdown dragouts I'd have with my ex-husband and call him everything under the sun and, cussing him
Hmm.
out and doing all those things,
Yeah.
and I'm like, he's mad at me because I'm calling him a jerk. I'm like, I am marrying a pansy. What is going on?
Mhm. Well, isn't it funny
God
that
knew what I needed.
God knows exactly. God knows
Exactly.
what we need,
Yes.
even when we don't know what we
No,
need.
he would not have been my choice. He wouldn't have been in my top 20. Not because he wasn't attractive. It was
Yeah.
just he was not anything in my type. And I let God lead. And it had to be that weird, or I probably wouldn't have dated him. It
Hmm.
was so strange and so off the wall. And like I said, we've been married 30 years this October.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing
you.
because I love 30 years. Yes.
Yes.
What do you feel like helped you keep your heart open and willing? Like after you had
Mm,
two divorces, I mean, honestly, I interviewed one lady and I think she was 20 or 21 when she said, I just felt like I was too old to get married again,
mm.
and here, you're 21 when got divorced your second time and now going into your third marriage. What do you feel like really kept you open and willing to just love again? Or
I was
maybe find love for the
petrified.
first time?
Yeah. I mean, truly, I did find love for the first time
Hmm.
because that wasn't love. That
Yeah.
was, needy, that whole savior mentality, that was lust. It was all those things,
Mhm.
thinking security with the second one and, those kinds of things. The desire to want to have what I knew my mom and dad didn't have.
Mhm.
Like my mom, she has a good marriage with her husband now, my stepdad, but she went through two terrible divorces. Her dad was terrible. My dad was terrible to her. He had been through five marriages and, I just saw all the terrible stuff.
Yeah.
I had all of that was rummaging around in there and I wanted it to be different. So I think that was part of it. But I'll be honest, I was literally petrified and have had God not done the weird stuff that he did. And there was
Mhm.
more to it than that, but that's the highlight.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
That's a good
I
one.
don't think I would have walked down that aisle because I was petrified. I didn't want to screw up.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make a mistake again.
Mhm.
To have I didn't want to repeat. I didn't want
Yeah.
to follow in my parents' footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally relate to that. So if there was somebody listening, which like I know there's going to be so many people listening to this that are going to be thinking, what in the world could I take away from this?
Mhm.
And so what would you say to that young girl or that midlife or our age? I don't know, maybe we're midlife too, I guess, because I still feel like we're young, that they
Yeah.
had made too many mistakes. Because I know for me, like, even though divorce isn't part of my personal story of with my husband and I, like there were a lot of mistakes made along the way. And so if somebody were listening and they're feeling like I just made too many mistakes along the way, What bit of encouragement could you give them, that hope of redemption, a fresh start, a new beginning? What would you say to that person listening right now?
It would be hard for me to say it without including my faith, because I do have Jesus. I do have someone who loves me unconditionally. I mean, I could say my husband loves me unconditionally, but truthfully, we're human. And so there might be conditions where he wouldn't love me. There is nothing, neither height nor depth nor anything can separate us from God's love. And Jesus talks about forgiving, 7 times 70 or what, I forget the scripture now, my head. It's been a long weekend and it's
Yeah.
like 100 degrees around here. So he talks about the forgiveness, and that he tells us to forgive others, but oftentimes we don't forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we are wanting to have a fresh start, if we are wanting to have a new chapter, have a whole new book, if you want, in those kinds of things, first of all, you have to know that there is a heavenly Father who loves you, and that his son paid all of that, free gift, so that you don't have to wallow in guilt. You don't have to wallow in shame. You can have 800,000 fresh starts.
Yeah.
The woman at the well, I've been married 30 years, and the woman at the well, I can cry every time I read that story, because I think about how purposeful he was. He did not have to go through Samaria. They actually avoided Samaria. They would have gone around Samaria. And he, at that time, at that moment, on that journey, stopped purposefully in the middle of the day to have a conversation with her, not judging, but he knew her. And he
Yeah.
told her all the things about herself. And she had been married 5 times, and she was living with someone now who wasn't her husband. And he just said, it doesn't matter. I'm giving you living water.
Yeah.
And that never runs dry. And that is always fresh. And it's always new every morning. And if we can understand that we're supposed to forgive other people, we also have to include that in ourselves. If we can say, I believe God has forgiven me, we have to then go to that next step and forgive ourselves,
Yes.
because we just keep in that same perpetual shame and guilt that neither God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, none of them ever keep. They don't keep that record.
Yeah.
We are the only ones who keep that record.
Yes, unfortunately, we are the only ones. I love that description of the living water, how it is fresh and new. It's a continual.
Always,
That's such a beautiful depiction of
always. So
God's
you can
love.
get dirty 8 million times, and you will get refreshed 8 million and one times
Yeah. Yes, I love that.
if
Thank
you
you so
allow it.
much. Yeah. Ooh, that is a sermon for the afternoon. So thank you for sharing that. I love it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So tell us about 10 children. We know how you got the first two. I mean, we know how you got
Yes,
them
we
all,
now have
right?
the very, yeah,
But give us some insight there. Did you guys plan on this big
no.
family? What was your,
Mm-mm.
okay.
No, I was an only child. So only children are inherently selfish by nature. So sharing and doing all that thing and sacrificing and doing all that thing tends to be something we have to work a little extra at,
Mm-hmm.
because, and plus having divorces and stuff, it's
Yeah.
all about me. I got 3 Christmases of things, but, because you have your blended, not
Right.
your blended families, but you're going here and going there. So that was not in my intent. And Brian and I were going to have a couple of children, and then we were done.
Mm-hmm.
And all of my children, except for my son, Sean, it was like, I don't want it to say intentional. I mean, the girls obviously were not intentional, but when I had gotten married and stuff, we knew it's like, well, this could be a possibility. We could get pregnant. And it sounds silly, but Sean was very much a surprise. We weren't not trying to get pregnant, but we weren't trying to get pregnant. And we
Mm-hmm.
had been really busy, and we're like, how did that happen? Like literally that was the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember kissing you. Like we had been so busy, this kind of thing. And I was done. So I had lost my baby weight and I was, feeling good. And when I found out I was pregnant with him, I was kind of irritated. I was like, what the heck? That kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, Now I had already had one miscarriage between Samuel and Seth. Um, but then, again, I'm thinking I'm done. So all that's kind of passed. Then I get pregnant with Sean and something changed in me. All I can say is that it was God. Brian was not there. And typically, God love our men, but they typically kind of are usually like, come on,
Mm-hmm.
at least our personalities. I'm ready to jump off the cliff and go do things. And
Yeah.
he's like, wait, wait, wait. Whoa, no, 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 slow down. I'm the microwave. He's the crock pot. So found out we're pregnant with Sean and it just changed in me. It was like, I want to have a bigger family. So we had Sean and then Brian's like, I'm done. And then I had a second miscarriage.
Mm.
And then he's like, I'm really done. And then I was mentoring a young mom who had a 2-year-old little boy. And her story is just devastating. It was so many horrible things all the way around. And she was getting rid of him. And those were her words.
Mm.
And she asked us to take him. And that was never in our plan. That adoption was not in our plan. Not because of anything wrong with adoption. It wasn't in my plan.
Right.
And God rarely follows our plan. And so in another whole podcast that could be just for adoption, which might be another great series to have.
For sure.
Put that in your hat to think about, because that's an awesome thing. God showed us very, very clearly. There were so many steps, so many things that happened. And so he brought Stephen into our lives and I had just had Simon. So I have a lot of S names.
I'm catching that.
Not all of them, because I have Elizabeth and Brittany. And then, so I'd had Sean and then a miscarriage and had Simon. And then that's when all of that started happening. And so we ended up with Stephen. His name was not Stephen. We changed his name, which again, that's a whole crazy thing and how God opened that up for him to begin to heal. And then we were done. And then I ended up getting pregnant with Micah, changed the name. We had thought the world would end it. It's like, you can't name him with an M name. It has to be an S name and all that, craziness.
Mm-hmm.
Then I had 2 miscarriages. We were still, we needed to be done kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I was now at the point where I was like, I kind of have a heart to adopt 2 little girls from Guatemala. Don't know where that came from, but that's what was in my heart. And Brian is like, I am so not there. I don't even know what is wrong with you, kind of thing. And I said, okay, can we come to a compromise? Can we give everything 1 year? If God opens the door financially for us to adopt, we'll do that. Or if I have a baby and have the baby full term and keep the baby, then we'll be done. If nothing happens within the year, we are done. We will make sure that doesn't happen anymore. He could get fixed, whatever.
Yeah.
And he asked for a couple of days to pray about it. And he came back and he was like, yes, I think that's a fair sacrifice on both our parts, and then kind of was like, how are you doing? 2 weeks later, I found out I'm pregnant with Isaiah. And right after that time, the Guatemalan border shut because there was so much trafficking of children being stolen from their families and shipped across the borders and stuff like that to be told that they were orphans and stuff like that. So they completely shut that, like all the doors, bam, 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 bam. Then found out that I was pregnant with Isaiah. And then we were done. And then we were done. We were done. And then God opened up my heart through an email about another child. And I went to get my hair done. And he's one of my very best friends. And we were getting ready to go on missions trips to Mexico. And he's like doing my hair. And he's like, I feel like God told me to tell you about this little boy named Brian in Mexico. I immediately burst into tears. And I'm like, shut up, Bill. And I'm just like, he's like, what is wrong with you? And then God brought us Brian. And the cool thing about him is that my son's name is Brian, or my husband's name is Brian. His name is Brian. He has 2 middle names, and all my boys have 2 middle names. And one of
Wow.
his middle names is Michelle. So he has
Wow.
both of our names in his name. He has 2 middle names, and God brought him to us when he was 13 from Mexico. And he just turned 23.
Wow. That's amazing. So
Yes.
two of your boys are
Adopted.
adopted. Okay.
Yes.
And how old was your other son? Was that Seth that you
With
adopted?
Stephen.
Oh, Stephen. See the S's, they're getting me.
Yes. I'm so sorry. That's all
That's
right.
okay. How old was he when you adopted him?
I mentored her for like a year and a half. So I met him when he was 2, and he came to us when he was 3.5,
Awesome.
almost 4.
So
And
how
then
many boys, how many girls?
2 girls, 8 boys.
Okay.
And 4 of them are like within 18 to 20 months of each other because
Mm,
of the 2 adopted ones and the 2 biologicals, because they're 18 months apart. And then you've got one that's 3 months older and one that, so they're all within like 20 months of each other.
yeah. And you mentioned in there that 4 miscarriages, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So how do you feel like the Lord really shaped you through like your heart, your comfort zone,
Mm.
through that difficult time? I'll just be honest, I've never had a miscarriage. So my daughter has actually had one, and
Mhm.
I don't know the heart of that. So give us a little
Sure.
insight on that.
Well, the first time it happened, you go through all the feelings of, what did I do wrong? I
Yeah.
caused this. All that, it's my fault. Everything is, my fault. And then the second one is, how could you, God, let this happen? Like, what did I do to deserve to have this happen? Because it
Hmm.
was a bad thing, a struggle that happened,
Yeah.
and you love life. And how could you let this baby not survive? So, um, you had mentioned in one of the questions, grief is such a quiet thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be very quiet, but it can be such a roller coaster, and sometimes really loud and come out of nowhere,
Mm,
and I went through all of those roller coasters of the anger and the denial and the compromise, and all of those things that you go through in that grief cycle. And then it was, I have to trust you in spite of the tough stuff. And I personally, for me, I always have to put it in perspective of, okay. And I don't mean it to sound like, at least I'm not this, or at least I'm not that. But for me, I have to say, okay, at least I didn't go through what Job went through. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
he never questioned God, and look at what he went through. Who am I to be any different? So I had to reconcile. And then I had to say, my life verse is, God will use all things together for good. The stuff that happened to me, the stuff that I did, the
Hmm.
stuff that just happens because of life. And after the second one, had they were all devastating, but I became more, I didn't freak out about it. I grieved in different ways for it.
Hmm.
And I was like, I'm trusting you, God, in spite of this. I'm
Yeah.
trusting you through this. I'm trusting you that if I lose everything, that you still are God, and you still reign, and you still love me.
Yeah.
Because at first it was, oh, there's a rejection. You didn't let me have this baby because I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. So that's where, you go there.
Yeah.
And
And
I healed through some of that
mhm.
over time of that.
And
And
of
if it
course,
can
that's
help,
not who God is. That's not the
it'll
God
help. No,
we serve.
absolutely not. But
Yeah.
that's what
Mhm.
oftentimes our first impression of who God is what
Mhm.
we see in our parents, typically our fathers, because we generally view God as, male, he's male God, Jesus was male, and he formed us. So there has to be some masculine and feminine traits, because he gave us our traits, and we are made in the image of him. So he's got to
Yeah.
have some of these traits and stuff. But we typically, you know, God is a man, So my father is my first representation of who God is, and that was definitely not a good representation.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I felt I was being punished.
Hmm. And I think probably a lot of people feel that way
I would
when
imagine.
things come up like that, for sure. It's
Yeah.
interesting that you mentioned the book of Job because this morning when I sat down to have my quiet time, I sometimes I'm just looking for the next place in my Bible to read. I'm not really
Mhm.
doing a study at the moment. I've just been reading through specific just different chapters as I feel like the Lord is leading me.
Yeah.
And this morning it was Job. Chapters one,
Ooh,
2, and 3. And where I stopped at the very beginning was in chapter 1 at the end, where he's talking about how all of the siblings, all of Job's children, they would get together and they were always together and having all these dinners or parties, whatever they were doing. And at the end, it talked about how Job was praying over them like continuously. And
yeah.
it made me go back a time or two and read it again. Like, even if you think your kids are doing good or whatever, like just keep praying over them.
Yeah.
And just the reminder. And it's no coincidence that you mentioned that. And that's exactly where the Lord had me reading this morning.
Wow.
And isn't that just what God does?
That's what he does all the stinking
Yeah.
time. And
Yeah.
most of the time I love it. There's
Hmm.
sometimes I'm like, you know,
Hmm.
what are you doing, God? But yeah, absolutely having that confirmation of what you're talking about, what you're going through, what he's wanting others to see through what you're doing, who
Hmm.
you're having people share. And in our day to day, he wants to do that more. He
Yeah.
wants to do that with us all the time. Sometimes we just aren't looking for it,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying, you walk and a oak leaf goes by and it's like, oh, God's telling me something about I
Yeah.
need to move to Oak Hill, California, or whatever.
Hmm.
We don't need to go be that kind of person.
Yeah.
But God speaks to us in all the things. He speaks to us in nature. He speaks to us obviously through the Bible, through prayer, talking to us. And I want to know because I have a pretty vivid imagination
Hmm.
and I can come up with lots of things all by myself. So I'm like, God, I want you to confirm that this is you and not
Yeah.
me being a crazy person.
Hmm.
And he's always faithful to give me lots of confirmation that
Yeah.
I'm saying or doing the right thing
Right.
because I want my words to be good,
Hmm.
to be salt and light.
Yeah. And pleasing to him. Yeah, for certain.
Correct.
Wow. Well, I'm just going to ask you one more question before we wrap it up. And so I would just say if you could go back to that 18-year-old Michelle and you just
Mm,
picture her in your mind, what would you say to her as you're looking towards the future? What piece of advice would you give her? And maybe it's that young girl that's listening now, or maybe it's a mom who has a teenage daughter who's
mm,
expecting, or maybe it's a nanny like me, a grandma, which she'd have to be a little bit older to have a child, or a granddaughter that was expecting, but we don't know who's going to be listening. So, what would you say to that young girl who might be listening today?
mm. When I saw that question, I instantly like got a little teary eyed, um, because of, there's people go back and they say, I have all these regrets.
Hmm.
And I can stand before you now at almost 55 and say, sure, are there some things I'd like to do differently, but I wouldn't change how my life has turned out because it has made me who I am. And through all of those things, it has made me stronger and it has, this, that, and the other. But at the same time, that 18-year-old was so broken and so hurt and not even knowing and understanding that it was like, oh, I don't even know what if I want to talk to that 18-year-old because I would just fall into a blubbering mess, and just want to say, you don't even know and understand how valued and loved you are. That what happened to you does not define you. What you have done does not need to define you any further. You have the power and the choices. You just have to be willing to make those sacrifices, to love yourself enough to not settle for less. And that's in everything, whether it's a relationship with a man, whether it's friendships, whether it's your children that you're getting ready to bring into the world, whatever that is, that you don't ever settle for less than. And we often settle for less than, or it's good enough. Don't settle for good enough.
Yeah.
And don't let what things that have happened up to this point in your life, other than taking them and using them for good, don't let them define you from this moment forward.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Whew. Well, I tell you, I have so enjoyed. I've gotten goosebumps many times because some of these
Yeah.
things I just didn't know. I know we've talked about things before, but just our connection and just knowing that God is in the midst of this. He
Yeah.
just, I think back to so many times when I was thinking about the podcast, wanting to start a podcast, wanting to get into the hearts and lives of people that I feel like this could really impact. And yet all the things came my way of, you shouldn't do this. Like you were saying earlier, is this really God's voice? Is God really want me to do this?
Mhm.
And time after time after time, he has showed up. And then again today, I'm just like, connecting with Michelle is so amazing because I even forgot to mention this. We're both from Indiana and we didn't know that when we connected either. So that's just another like
Right.
God wink
Yeah,
in my book. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I
tell-
think it coming into this world that I'm in, because it's what will people think? What if I fail? What if I do this? And I've decided now that failure does not need to be a word that needs to be in our vocabulary, because what the meaning of failure is not, it's a lie.
yeah,
Look at Albert Einstein, look at, Edison. Look, he 900 and sometimes to get the light bulb. What if he
yep.
said, I'm a failure and I'm quitting at 684? You know,
Hmm.
whatever it is. So what if you do this and it doesn't grow beyond a couple of hundred viewers? What if
Hmm.
one person
Yeah.
is supposed to be the reason that you do all this? As long
Yes.
as you are following what you feel the Lord is telling you until you have a release, then that's the success.
Yes.
Failure is such a subjective word,
Hmm.
and I feel like it's such a lie. And
Yeah.
everything that we're doing, and I'm trying to teach that to my acting students, you
Yeah.
know, it's not failure, it's learning, it's
Hmm.
growing, it's stepping out, it's it's doing what you feel in your heart is the right thing to do. And if something goes sideways, you start again and you go do
Right.
something different,
I've
and you
had a
learn
lot of
from it.
things go sideways, I'll tell you,
Oh,
and I
my
just keep
Lanta.
going.
Yes. I've had way too many things go sideways,
Yeah.
100%. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So I applaud you for stepping
Oh,
out and, you know, doing what you feel that you are supposed to do. And, when if I have one more minute to say,
sure.
a few years ago when I got released, when I finally let go of that, I'm not worthy,
Hmm.
and started stepping into that, um, because I had always wanted to sing and act, always. But all of those things kept me. I still grew. It was like the flower or the dandelion that grows through the sidewalk. I mean,
Hmm.
it's growing through really harsh things,
Yeah.
but there's not a grove of dandelions. There's one that comes through. And that's how I've kind of felt I had lived my life for the longest time. And when I took away the cement and I took away the why am I not worthy? God says I'm worthy. I am his child, and I crippled myself is
Hmm.
basically what I'm saying. And when I decided, okay, I'm not a cripple and I'm not going to allow these things, I am worthy. And who cares if I don't weigh 120 pounds? And who cares if I'm 50 years old and I'm auditioning for things? And who cares? I'm going to start my own production company. Haven't done a lot with it yet, but I feel like God told me to. Who cares? I'm going
Hmm.
to step out and do these things. There was such a freedom. I started writing songs. I started doing more. God, it just exploded. And, I have a song that I wrote that it said, you were sealed behind these iron doors in a room far from home. I had sealed myself from because of what happened to me, and me never came out.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a little portion of me.
Yeah.
And now that I got free from that, completely free from that, it's like I'm doing what God tells me. And if y'all think I'm a loony bin, then that's fine. And if that embarrassment and that failure and all that other stuff, go, go write the songs, go do the things,
Yeah.
go, go do those things. And that's another thing that I'd like to say to the 18-year-old, and anybody
Yeah.
who's listening. Don't wait until you're 54, 55, 56, to be free to do those things.
Right.
Go do them, because the lie that your mind tells you and that the enemy tells you is just that. It
Yeah.
is a lie.
100%.
Yeah.
I
And so
totally
I have
agree with
so
that.
much more freedom now
Yes.
than I did,
I love it.
in those days.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, hey, tell us, friend, how can someone connect with you? Because they might have questions more about, motherhood, lots of kids, adoption, or so many things, but also somebody might connect with you for music or film or something like that. So tell us how we can connect with you, and I'll be sure to put them in the show notes as well.
Okay. So I am on Facebook, Michelle L. King on Facebook. I do have an acting page, but I just have my regular Facebook, and
Okay.
they could message me and friend me through there. I probably wouldn't give my phone number on here
Oh, no.
necessarily, but I have Michelle L. King actor at
Okay.
Gmail,
Okay.
or beyondtheshoresmedia at Gmail. So
Okay.
those are two different ways that you can connect with me. I do have IMDb's, and you can see different things that I've done if it's something specific on acting and that kind of thing. But I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of those things, especially motherhood and all the things that we've done wrong,
Yes.
and they still managed to turn out okay
Yes.
in spite of us,
Absolutely.
and all that good jazz. So I firmly believe, and that's what is needed in that connection. And I applaud you for bringing that connection together.
Thank you. Oh, tell us really quickly, how old is your oldest and how old is your youngest?
My oldest just turned 36 in May, and Isaiah just turned 17 in March.
Okay. So same. My
Yeah.
children are 17 to 36.
Yes, I know. Ian and Isaiah are like very close in age. Like,
Okay. They're
when's
both March
Ian's
babies.
birthday?
21st.
Yeah, and his is the 18th.
Okay.
So
Wow.
they're
That's
3 days
fun.
apart.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was a week, but yeah, only 3 days apart. And
And then
then,
my oldest son, his birthday's in April.
and she's May 4th. May the 4th be with you. Yes.
Okay. Well, there we go. See all the
That
connections.
is so awesome.
Yeah.
And you have adoption, you have all that other stuff. So
Yeah.
if you do an adoption series, let me
I
know.
will. I'm
I'd
going
be
to for
happy to
sure.
hop in there and
Yeah.
maybe you could do a panel or something. That'd
Yeah.
be awesome
That
to
would
do
be
all that.
fun. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it so much. I know that our
You're
listeners
welcome.
are going to feel so connected and they're going to get so much inspiration from all the things that you shared today. So, friends, if you are listening and you want to reach out to Michelle, please do that. I'm going to pop them in the show notes. But I also want to say to you, please rate, review, and share this podcast, because here's the thing: when the ratings are good and you give a written review and you share it with someone that you feel like they really need to hear this story, it is going to help push this podcast out to more and more people, not for my sake, but for the sake of those who really need to hear it, because we all touch the world one fingerprint at a time. So thanks so much for tuning in today, friends, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. That's it for today, friends. Thanks for tuning in with me today. I hope today's episode stirred your soul, sparked your faith, and reminded you that your story is far from over. Keep walking in freedom. Keep showing up bold, and never forget, God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Be sure to leave a review, subscribe, or share this podcast with a friend who needs to hear it as well. Until next time, keep letting her out to play, because the world needs your fire.